2. The first clues. When we gained the stage, the confusion was at its height. The conductor stood as though petrified, the bow still raised in his trembling hand, while the orchestra had fallen into a discordant silence. The audience pressed forward, a sea of pale faces and anxious whispers, and in the midst of this chaos, Holmes moved with that extraordinary composure which so distinguished him in moments of crisis. "Clear the stage!" he commanded in a tone that carried above the din. There was something so authoritative in his manner that the ushers and stagehands obeyed without question, though the manager, a flustered little man in evening dress, fluttered about like a distracted bird. Watson, myself, remained at Holmes's side as he stooped to examine the spot where Signor Torrini had last been seen. There, upon the polished boards, lay the violin, a magnificent Stradivarius, its strings still quivering faintly, as though reluctant to yield up the last notes of their master's touch. The bow lay some feet distant, and near it Holmes pointed out a curious object which, in the tumult, might easily have been overlooked, a crumpled white handkerchief. He lifted it delicately between thumb and forefinger, holding it up to the light. "Observe, Watson," he said, his voice calm yet keen with interest, "a faint trace of some dark substance, perhaps grease paint, perhaps soot. The initials embroidered here, A.T., must surely stand for Angelo Torrini himself. And yet what cause had he to discard it thus at the very moment of his disappearance?" The manager wrung his hands in despair. "Mr. Holmes, sir, this is ruin, ruin, I tell you. The most famous violinist in Europe, vanished from my stage before the very eyes of London. What will the papers say? What will the patrons demand? My livelihood, my reputation, gone in an instant." "Compose yourself, Mr. Morton," Holmes replied curtly, his eyes never leaving the floor. "The interests of the public are well enough, but for the moment my concern is with the fate of the missing man. Watson, your medical eye may be of service. Do you perceive any mark, any disturbance upon these boards?" I bent closer. At first I could discern nothing beyond the scuff of countless feet, but as Holmes indicated with his long forefinger, I saw a faint impression, no larger than that of a child's shoe, yet oddly deep, as though made by someone of considerable weight despite its small dimensions. Holmes produced his magnifying lens and examined the mark with absorption. "A curious print indeed," he murmured. "Too small for a man, too heavy for a child. I shall wish to compare it with others in due course." At that moment, one of the stagehands rushed forward, his face pale. "Sir, Mr. Holmes, I swear I saw a shadow slipping through the side passage yonder, not a minute before you arrived." Holmes's eyes gleamed. "Which passage?" The man pointed to a narrow doorway at the left of the stage, half concealed behind a curtain. Without another word, Holmes strode across and disappeared into the gloom beyond. I followed at once, my heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and dread. The passage was dimly lit, the air close with the smell of dust and grease paint. We advanced cautiously, Holmes's lantern, procured from the stage manager, casting a wavering circle of light upon the floor. Presently he stooped again, and I saw that he had discovered a further clue, a few grains of some dark powder scattered upon the wooden boards. "Snuff, Watson," he pronounced after a swift examination, "but not of the common variety. Note the reddish tinge. Turkish blend, if I am not mistaken, a rare and expensive indulgence. Our quarry is no ordinary ruffian." The passage ended in a small dressing room, deserted now save for a single overturned chair and a mirror cracked across its center. Holmes examined every corner with his usual meticulous care. At length he straightened, his expression thoughtful. "Consider, Watson. A violinist vanishes in the very act of performance. He leaves behind his instrument, his bow, and his handkerchief, but not the faintest trace of his own person. We find a child-sized footprint of abnormal depth, a scattering of exotic snuff, and evidence of a hurried exit by this passage. What do these things suggest to you?" I could only shake my head. Some elaborate trick, no doubt, but by what mechanism could a man vanish before the eyes of 1,000 witnesses? "That, my dear fellow," Holmes said, with a gleam in his eye, "is precisely the problem that engages us. There is trickery here, yes, but also something deeper. Torrini's disappearance was not a random act. It was prepared, rehearsed, executed with precision. And until we discern the motive, the method will remain obscure." Just then, a muffled cry echoed from the alley beyond the dressing room. Holmes sprang to the door, flung it open, and peered into the foggy night. I caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure darting between the gas lamps, vanishing into the mist before we could give chase. Holmes drew a sharp breath. "We are on the right track, Watson, but we must tread carefully. The net is wider than it appears, and the quarry more elusive than most. Tonight we have seen only the beginning." And with that, he turned back into the hall, the lantern light throwing his tall figure into stark relief against the shadows, and I knew that another long night of pursuit lay before us.